It's always important to cover the basics when you're involved, deeply involved in your own spiritual process. The fascination and the envelopment, I guess, with the process itself can become completely consuming. And as you go along, trying to navigate the ring pass knots of transformation, which is those particularly sticky moments of forgiveness, those ones that seem like you can never forgive, or you don't know how, or it seems to be completely emotionally overwhelming, where you're actually forgiving an adaptation of character, an adaptation of, well, the illusion of character, but you're forgiving an adaptation of personal identity that you've taken on board at some point as an idea of defense. In those moments, everything can be really thick and confusing, and it'll feel like the monkey on your back, like literally. You just want to get away. So sticking with the basics, keeping yourself grounded, and just allowing for grace to guide you through those moments rather than trying to use your own pointy brain to try and work it out is incredibly helpful. Simple things like be here now, this moment. You know, this moment is the only moment you're alive, the only moment you can love, you can give and receive, all of that sort of thing. But finding yourself, how will I put this? Finding yourself capable of bringing yourself back to the moment takes a little bit of mind training, and which is why we're doing the workbook lessons of A Course in Miracles, and especially those early lessons where we're undoing the way we see things now, the first half of the workbook. But of course, if you're looking at one of your ring pass knots, one of your more integrated character defects or character defenses, you're going to find it hard to bring yourself back to the here and now. Your mind will want to continually keep wandering away and looking at the problem rather than realizing there is no problem. There is just an opportunity to let go and let God, an opportunity to focus on truth or focus on an idea of truth if you haven't yet experienced truth for yourself, and allow that moment of grace to enter into your awareness to bring you back to the present moment, the here and the now. The here and the now has a couple of levels to it, and I think I've mentioned this in other videos, but there's the conceptual here and now, where we're here and now in and of the body, trying to be present as if in the situation, like when someone's talking to you and you want to focus, you want to be here and now and present and give them your attention and listen, you know, and actually hear what's being said rather than interpret what's being said, which is a big difference. And then, of course, there's the here and the now when you meditate, where you go beyond words, beyond conceptualization of thought form associations, and enter into the here and the now of, I guess you could call it nothingness or emptiness or stillness or silence or, well, that'll do. I can't think of another one. But when you enter into that moment and you begin to wait, you practice waiting there in the here and the now. So I want to cover both of those aspects, both of those levels, starting with the meditative one. and then we'll bring it back from our meditative one, which eventually becomes the nature of the conceptual one. So what happens when you meditate, your meditation is a retraining of the mind, right? It's a refusal. It's an active refusal to participate in listening to the monologue of the ego, of that chit-chat, yak that goes on all day long. And you're actively and consciously, no, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to be still instead. And you practice your mind training lessons. Now, initially, and even in the course, Jesus has some very repetitive style lessons where you will repeat to yourself for a minute or two a particular thought, a particular idea that the Course presents, such as I'm not a body, I am free, I'm still as God created me. And you'll repeat that to yourself mantra style, which means to repeat it over and over and over. When you do that, you do it with purpose. Okay, when you repeat it over and over, you're not just there sort of meh, 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 meh. You're focusing on what you're doing. You're training your mind to focus and to be present with even repeating that one idea over and over. And you're putting emphasis on your focus, emphasis on the activity of repeating it, emphasis on your witness to yourself, repeating that over and over. And what that does, instead of your mind ordinarily just wandering off with every random thought that comes in, you're training yourself deliberately and consciously. You're training yourself to focus on one thing, one thought, okay? Then eventually, and the one that I just used then is quite a long one, actually. I mean, some mantras, may all beings be blessed, may all beings be happy, which is from Tibetan Buddhism, I think. Could be wrong about that. You're training yourself to go from quite a long thought, a long idea, and then maybe you'll shorten it. God is but love, and therefore so am I. And then maybe you'll shorten it again. I am love. Right? And you'll repeat that. I am love. I am love. I am love. I am love. And you'll focus on it as you say it. You don't have to say it like a robot. You can give it emphasis and emphasis on the tones and the vernacular. You know, how you say it to yourself. If that helps you to focus, it doesn't really matter. If that helps it to keep it fresh in your mind rather than wandering off to, someone's at the front door. And I mean, if someone comes to the front door while you're practicing meditation, of course, just ignore it. Let them go away. Or if the phone rings, don't answer it. You're meditating. That's your prime purpose. And you have to put that as your full focus, as your highest thing that you're doing whilst you're doing it. Let the world fall apart and, whatever. So you bring yourself through that mantra-style recitation of a particular idea that has a higher reaching vibration about it. Generally, you don't repeat to yourself like, I'm hungry, I feel like a meat pie. I'm hungry, I feel like a meat pie, particularly. Although you could, and it would probably have the same efficacy, but you have to... we don't have to, but I find anyway, it's helpful to try to keep everything lined up with the divine and the celestial, and it's just much easier to put all those eggs into one basket, because the one basket of God is your basket, like you are that. So eventually you get to a place where I am. Right, you'll just be meditating, I am, and you'll be repeating that to yourself for a few minutes. And if you've got a set of beads, like prayer beads, mala beads, japa beads, or whatever you might call them, you can use those. There should be 108 beads on a strand, and you'll have a master bead, and you can start from the master bead and work your way around, thumb over forefinger, and just pull the bead towards you as you say each recitation, and that might help you to focus as well. Initially, you might find that you'll fall asleep during your recitations, and that's fine. At least you can see that you fell asleep, and you might need to put more effort in next time. So, and you'll get to the point where you're reciting just I am, and I'll just, or God is. And in the Course in Miracles, it says, and then we cease to speak. We say God is, and then we cease to speak. So our meditations then become silent. We go from that mantra style training of the mind to a single idea, and we step off from that single idea into silence, and we practice listening into the silence, hearing into the silence. I never quite know how to talk about it, leaning into the silence. But eventually what happens through your meditative efforts, and let's say you practice every day for an hour, or maybe every day for 15 minutes, whatever you feel good about, with the idea, of course, that you might want to increase as you go, and it would be helpful to increase as you go. What happens is you retrain your mind in those moments to what it is you want, what it is you're about, your new purpose, and your mind begins to follow suit. Even in the conceptual realm, even in the realm of form, you'll notice that you'll be walking around and your mind will start to become naturally more quiet, more peaceful, less chatter. And of course, with your eyes open and walking around, it's incredibly difficult to practice listening into the stillness, because everything, you've got maximum sense overload happening, and everything is attempting constantly to draw you into the drama of the world. If you're somebody who can particularly walk around in a very still sense of self throughout the day for a prolonged period, that's amazing and excellent. I can't. I've 26 years I've been practicing this, and it's still a matter of, if my eyes are open and I'm walking through a shopping centre, it's still a matter of only a few minutes. And I think it was, might have been Maharshi. I'm thinking it was somebody else. So it might have been Krishnamurti. Said something like, it's impossible to stay consciously aware of your external world and simultaneously maintain the sense of self from a higher perspective. So the way Jesus deals with that in the Course is that he sets you a specific period of time each day to practice, and that's enough, right? If Jesus tells you that's enough, then that's enough. And every one of those workbook lessons has specific instructions with regarding how long to practice for. And some of them he says, if you feel like practicing for longer, you can, if you don't feel a sense of strain or discomfort, and But I remember before I found the Course, I used to practice meditation usually for about an hour at a minimum. And at first when I started practicing, I was not very good at it, and a couple of minutes and I'd fall asleep. But as I practiced more and more, it became more confident, I suppose, with what I was doing. The time increased. But to no real advantage. I didn't find there was any real advantage with it the way I was doing it back then, which is why I was very grateful when the Course came along with those mind training lessons halfway through the book. Here and now, on the conceptual level, as in with the example of listening to somebody, is another, like everything can be used. Your ultimate purpose, your ultimate, what would you call it? Your ultimate efforts are directed towards pushing through the veil of consciousness, or pushing right up against the veil of consciousness, which happens during a deep meditation or a purposeful meditation. And meditation shouldn't become ritualistic. It should be when you feel like it, when you get a prompt for it. It's not a dogmatic or ritualistic thing that you should be looking to set aside time for every day at the same time, same place. And that's something that Jesus is very specific about in the Course, is not to make the lessons or the practice ritualistic. Right? There should be a sense of comfort and no sense of strain to complete anything. Right? But you can use everything throughout the day also purposefully, if you're aware of it. And you'll realize, like through this, you'll realize through some of those workbook lessons, when you have to practice them on the hour, every hour, and you get to the end of the day and you realize, oh man, I haven't done my lesson all day, right? Which is fine, that's okay. You can get apps that send you an alarm to do it on the hour, every hour, but I tend to poo-poo on those apps and things like that, because the whole point of this thing is to train your mind to remember itself, is to teach your mind and discipline your mind to become focused without the need for external assistance, right? Because the external world being the illusory world, we're trying to get rid of all dependency on the external world for even learning aids like that and medicines and other things, but it's a progression. It's not like, oh, I'm just not going to take my medicine anymore, or I'm not going to use my app anymore, but you should be aware of it, right? Ultimately, you want to let go of all dependency on external form assistance. But throughout the day, as you remember that you've forgotten to do your lesson, right? As you remember you've forgotten, then you can remember to remember. Does that make sense? And in everything throughout the day, every encounter is purposeful, every situation and event is purposeful. You're always there to represent God. You're always there to represent the universal curriculum through your own manner, through your own character, through your own beingness. However that looks and whatever it is that you happen to be doing, there's no specific thing that you have to do to represent that. It's just being yourself. It's just being who you are. And that's going to be, your ability for that is going to be tempted. It's going to be pushed and pulled at it, and you're going to be poked and prodded, and every trigger you have is going to be activated. And it's like, hopefully, through understanding the nature of your purpose as being a person of forgiveness, and understanding that mind training is your most important thing, you're going to be able to pull all that together in a moment of bringing yourself into the here and now, of remembering to remember, and making that connection again with the Holy Spirit in you when you realize that you've forgotten to remember. Okay? So, and I had a very good moment yesterday of that, where all my buttons were pushed, and there was no way out of the situation, and I had to come and do a little restorative when I got home. I had to bring myself into my room, and doesn't happen very often, but it happens. And I had a realization of the nature of my mind trying to control the narrative of a situation that was just becoming intolerable. And it was tricky, which is why I'm making this video. It was tricky to bring my mind back to the here and the now in that moment, because there was no cessation of the particular goings on that was pushing the trigger. But it was great to see there was a trigger. I was totally grateful, right? So it wasn't that I got upset about it at all. It was incredibly useful. And as Jesus says, every stone will be upturned, everything will be uncovered. So I was grateful for that uncovering, even though it was quite unexpected. But everything throughout the day is useful, every situation you find yourself in. And there's a funny thing that happens with this, mostly with women, because women, I think, are more tuned in emotionally, more open to their emotions and things, which allows them a more accessible, I don't know how to, it's like they sense it better, I think. The opportunity or the vibrations in certain things, right? So women particularly, and I don't want to harp on about it being just for women, because men are the same, but generally conditioned to dumb it down somewhat. But one of the things that happens in spiritual circles a lot is people gravitate towards work opportunities, like employment opportunities and business opportunities and social activities that tend to reflect what they think spiritual self should align with, if that makes sense. The spiritual ego should align with, and it's all ego, such as jobs in the yoga industry. And I call it an industry because in the West it very much is an industry. But the yoga, massage, to some extent, the more esoteric forms of what we might think in the West are spiritual participation, such as palmistry and card reading and all those sorts of things. And it's just a kind of a funny thing that tends to be, it's almost as if it's a comfort zone. It's almost as if working in those industries and working in that kind of environment supports the nature of transformation, whereas other things don't, right? But I'm always of the opinion, and this is many people I've met similarly are of the opinion that if you want to learn to meditate, go and sit next to a highway where it's noisy, not in some rainforest or some meditation hall where it's quiet and there's nice music playing. And if you want to serve the world, I mean, serve it where your skills lie. I mean, people leave their jobs and their industry to find things that they think are more spiritual as they begin to take on board more and more spiritual perspectives of themselves in the world, and it's like, really, if you've got computer skills, go and be a manager at IBM or something and serve God that way. Because it's not about what you do, it's about the being that you do it as, or the being that you do it from. It's like, like Jesus says, I'm not here to serve the wealthy and the healthy. I'm here to serve the poor and the downtrodden. I'm used where I'm needed the most. And if you look at some of these big industrial complex organizations like IBM, perhaps you will find within the framework of their employment structure that the relationships that prevail in those places can be completely disharmonious and hostile towards each other with a very strong sense of competitiveness. It's like, what better place for a teacher of God to be? In complete anonymity also. It's like, let me be the light in that dark place. It's not about putting on a sarong and some beads and becoming spiritual, as a guru or a yoga teacher or any of that sort of stuff. I wanted to call it rubbish then, but everything has a purpose. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. But bringing yourself back to the here and the now on the conceptual, on the form level, it often takes, because it is on the form level, it's not as compliant, I guess, or not as malleable, that's a better way, not as malleable and easy to fall into as in the meditative level, but you often need to take yourself to a little place, and like your room, your bedroom. And I remember when I was at the healing center, everyone had to have their own room so that when the shit was hitting the fan, you had somewhere to go back to where you could shut the door and just run through what you needed to go through to bring yourself back to the here and now. And those workbook lessons, I mean, I always use those workbook lessons when I was there, in those days. But quite often you'll find when your mind is disturbed by something, the imagery and the thoughts about what it is that seems to be disturbing you will be so prominent that it's hard to find that sort of little wriggle room in there to just be still for a second and let it all come to pass. So yesterday I had to sit and even this morning there was a bit of residue with it. I had to sit and just remind myself for a few moments, let go of the past. Let go of the past. It's already in the past. And let go of the future. Don't worry about how this is going to look. Let go of that and just breathe and just bring yourself back to the here and the now. All right? There's only here. There is only now. Everything else is a deception. It's an illusion. It's an attempt by my ego to keep me focused on things that no longer exist or will never exist, such as the future and the past, or the future and the past. Take a few breaths and bring yourself back to the here and the now, and remember that you are love. And remember also that those around you, beyond the form, beyond the rhetoric, beyond the story, is the truth of them. And I had a moment, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do, which is Jesus on the cross. Forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. There's a moment of remembering, of accepting that those who seem to walk the world like me and have their own lives and their own ambitions and their own agendas and their own everything, they are in the dark as I was in the dark. They don't know why they're here. They don't know why things happen to them. They don't know. Somewhere in their mind they do. Somewhere in their mind is the memory of making the decision to come here. But that's obscured from them by the ego. So setting the example for peace, although not always easy, is the most important thing that you can be doing in your life. All right? And when it's not easy, of course, you're entitled to miracles. Lesson 77. And if you haven't read Lesson 77 before, I'm urging you, when you finish this video, go and spend 10 minutes with your book. If you've got the Course in Miracles, open to Lesson 77 and just read it without any sense of hurry. Okay? Lesson 77, I'm entitled to miracles. I hope it's 77 anyway. I haven't read it for a while. I'm pretty sure it is. All right, I love you. That's today's video, and thank you for tuning in. Also, Tyna and I will be starting the Zoom meetings again on the 7th, I think, here in Australia, which is the 8th in America. She will put a link to the Zoom group at the end of this video, or hopefully she will. Tyna, if you're watching this. I believe she is going to vet everyone that is coming to make sure we don't get trolls, because we have had some weird responses to things on, as expected. I mean, mind is weird, you know, but that's up to Tyna anyway. I'm leaving that part of it to her. If it was me, I would just open the doors and let everybody come, but that's part of her transformation, so that's how she's learning about unconditional love in her own way. So Tyna will put a link there to whatever it is that she's doing with the Zoom thing, and I know a lot of you guys now have expressed an interest in that, so it's going to be exciting and cool to be able to see you all in person, because most of you have got funny little code names on YouTube, and I don't really know who's who or what's what as far as that goes, except for your dad's mate who always tells me that he loves me, and that's a given. I know that one. Thank you, brother. Also, thank you for the donations. We are very close now, very close. In fact, we're going ahead with the editing now for the little booklet, which probably we'll have another Zoom. I think, Tyna, if you're watching this video, we'll have a Zoom before we do the main Zoom about that little booklet and just get all our ducks in a row with it again. But yeah, thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you. Peace.